The silent invasion. The Proxima station glittered like a diamond against the velvet darkness of space, its sprawling habitation rings rotating in perfect harmony around a central axis. Home to 30,000 colonists, it represented humanity's most ambitious deep space outpost, a beacon of technological achievement, and the gateway to further expansion into the Orion Arm. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck, watching as transport vessels docked at the station's massive berths. 3 years as Proxima's security chief had given her a deep appreciation for the station's significance. This wasn't just a colony. It was humanity's statement to the cosmos. We are here, we are expanding, and we are unstoppable. Commander, we have an anomaly on long-range scanners, Lieutenant Rice reported, her voice cutting through Chen's thoughts. Chen turned, brow furrowing. Details. Unknown signatures approaching from Sector 7. They're not matching any Earth Alliance registry. Chen's pulse quickened. In her 3 years stationed at Proxima, they'd never encountered anything that couldn't be identified. The nearest non-human civilization was supposedly 20 light-years away, and relations had been minimal but peaceful. Alert status yellow. I want all defense systems online and ready. The next 12 minutes changed everything. The objects materialized just beyond Proxima's defensive perimeter, sleek, obsidian vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. There were 7 of them, moving with impossible precision. Hail them, Chen ordered, but before Rice could comply, the vessels accelerated. No warnings, no demands, no declaration. The attack was devastating in its efficiency. Weapons unlike anything humanity had encountered before sliced through Proxima's shields as if they weren't there. Habitation rings shattered. Atmosphere venting into space carried thousands of lives with it. Chen watched in horror as the station's defenses tried and failed to respond. Their most powerful weapons barely scratched the attackers' hulls. "Get a distress signal out," she shouted, bracing herself as the observation deck trembled violently. "Everyone to emergency pods." Rice worked frantically at her console. "Signal sent, but they're jamming our communications." Chen knew then that they wouldn't survive, but humanity needed to know what happened here, what was coming for them. "Broadcast on all frequencies," she ordered, her voice steady despite everything falling apart around her. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of Proxima Station. We are under attack by unknown forces. 7 vessels, technology far beyond our own. They came without warning. This isn't a raid. This is extermination. Earth Alliance, prepare yourselves." There, the observation deck exploded, and Proxima Station, humanity's pride and gateway to the stars, was gone. Admiral Marcus Donovan stood in the silent briefing room aboard the EA's Intrepid, Earth's most advanced battleship. The holographic display showed only debris where Proxima Station had once been, twisted metal and frozen bodies drifting in a macabre dance. "Play it again," he ordered, his voice gravelly from lack of sleep. The intelligence officer nodded, and Commander Chen's final transmission echoed through the room once more. When it ended, Donovan closed his eyes briefly. "Analysis. The attack was precisely executed, sir," Captain Wei responded. "No survivors. Based on radiation signatures, we're dealing with technology at least 3 generations beyond our own, and we have no idea who they are or why they did this." Wei hesitated. "We found something else, sir. Similar patterns of destruction at 3 unmanned outposts in neighboring systems. We didn't connect them because they were automated facilities. No casualties until now." Donovan's jaw tightened. "They've been testing our defenses, seeing what we're capable of." "It appears so, sir." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. 30,000 lives snuffed out as casually as one might swat an insect. Not for resources, not for territory. Proxima had nothing that would justify such an attack. "They're clearing a path," Donovan finally said. This wasn't random. This was the first step in something bigger. Earth had enjoyed relative peace for decades. The unification of nations under the Earth Alliance banner had brought unprecedented cooperation and technological advancement. Humanity had expanded cautiously into nearby star systems, establishing colonies and outposts, always careful not to overextend. They had encountered 3 other spacefaring species, all at similar developmental stages. Relations had been cautious but peaceful. Trade agreements were being negotiated, cultural exchanges planned. None of those species possessed technology capable of what had happened at Proxima. "Sir," Wei said, interrupting Donovan's thoughts, "long-range sensors at Arcturus Outpost have detected unusual activity. Multiple objects on approach, similar signatures to what hit Proxima." Donovan's blood ran cold. Arcturus housed a civilian research facility with over 15,000 people. How long? Less than 9 hours until they arrive. Donovan straightened, decision made in an instant. Deploy the 7th Fleet to Arcturus immediately. I want every available ship with functioning engines there before those things arrive. The intelligence officer looked up, shock evident on her face. "Sir, the 7th Fleet is 23 vessels. If these are the same attackers." "I know the odds, Lieutenant, but we're not letting another colony disappear without a fight. And we need information about what we're dealing with." Donovan's eyes hardened. "Launch every surveillance drone we have. I want visual confirmation of these bastards." The battle at Arcturus lasted 11 minutes. 12,000 civilians were evacuated before the attackers arrived. The 7th Fleet positioned itself between the outpost and the incoming threat, weapons charged and ready. This time, there were 15 of the Obsidian ships. They didn't respond to hails. They didn't slow their approach. They simply came, implacable and deadly. The Earth Alliance vessels fought with everything they had. Nuclear-tipped missiles, particle beams, railguns firing depleted uranium rounds, all directed at the attackers in a desperate barrage. It wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. When it was over, 19 Earth Alliance vessels had been destroyed. The remaining 4 were crippled, barely able to limp back to the nearest jump point. But they had achieved something crucial. They had gathered data, recorded the battle from multiple angles, and most importantly, captured images of the enemy. Admiral Donovan reviewed the footage in stunned silence. The attackers weren't ships at all, at least not in the conventional sense. They were biological or biomechanical, massive creatures encased in technology. The obsidian hulls were actually exoskeletons, protecting the organic matter within. When damaged, they repaired themselves, closing breaches and regenerating armor. "What in God's name are we dealing with?" Donovan whispered. The answer came 3 days later when a long-dormant quantum beacon activated at Earth's lunar command. The message was simple, a request for communication from a species identifying themselves as the Preservers. The being that appeared on the holographic display wasn't humanoid. It resembled something between an insect and a cephalopod, with multiple limbs and 3 distinct brain structures visible through a translucent cranium. "We apologize for contacting you directly," it said, its words translated by an algorithm that struggled to keep pace. "But you are in grave danger." For the next hour, the Preserver explained what humanity was facing. They called themselves the Shroud Collective, a hive-minded species that expanded through the galaxy in cycles, awakening from hibernation to feed and reproduce before returning to dormancy. "They do not see you as sentient," the Preserver explained. "To them, you are biomass to be harvested, genetic material to be absorbed. They study a species' defenses before attacking in force. What you experienced was merely their reconnaissance." "Why are you telling us this?" Donovan asked. "Why help us?" The Preserver's appendages moved in what might have been a gesture of regret. "We have fought them before, as have many species. Sometimes we win. Often we lose. But the cycle continues. We help because every species that survives strengthens the galaxy against them. How do we stop them? You cannot, not completely. But you can make yourselves indigestible too costly to harvest. The Shroud are pragmatic in their hunger. The Preserver provided coordinates, the location of a Shroud hibernation world at the edge of human space, a place where millions of them slept, waiting to awaken fully and begin their feast. "Strike there," the Preserver said. "Strike hard. Make them reconsider your world as a viable target." After the transmission ended, Donovan sat in silence. Then he opened a secure channel to Earth Alliance High Command. "We need to mobilize everything," he said without preamble. "Every ship, every weapon, every soldier. This isn't about defending a colony anymore. This is about the survival of our species." The following months transformed Earth and its colonies. Factories that had produced civilian goods were repurposed for military production. Research facilities worked around the clock, incorporating the technical data the Preservers had shared. Recruitment centers couldn't process volunteers fast enough. Admiral Donovan stood in the massive shipyard orbiting Mars, watching as the newest dreadnoughts were fitted with weapons specifically designed to combat the Shroud. Earth Alliance had never built warships on this scale before. Each one was over 2 kilometers long, with armor capable of withstanding the Shroud's energy weapons and arsenal that could theoretically penetrate their regenerating hulls. "Final count?" he asked his aide. 120,000 ships, sir. Everything from dreadnoughts to fighters. Over 6 million personnel." Donovan nodded, his expression grim. Intelligence suggested the Shroud were preparing for their main push into human space. Dozens of their scout ships had been detected, easily evading the defensive perimeters around outer colonies. The Preservers had been clear. Humanity couldn't wait. The Shroud had to be hit while most of their forces were still in hibernation. It would be humanity's only chance. "Send the order," Donovan said. "Operation Prometheus begins in 24 hours. As he gazed at the assembled armada, the largest military force humanity had ever created, he couldn't help but wonder if it would be enough. 30,000 lives at Proxima Station. They had to be avenged. But more importantly, Earth had to be protected. The Shroud had awakened a sleeping giant. Now they would learn what humanity was capable of when pushed to the edge of extinction. The countdown to humanity's first interstellar war had begun. Operation Prometheus. The jump point glowed with ethereal blue energy as the first wave of Earth Alliance vessels prepared to enter. Admiral Donovan stood on the bridge of the flagship Thermopylae, watching as the massive fleet organized itself into attack formation. 120,000 ships, from nimble fighters to city-sized dreadnoughts, all prepared for what would likely be humanity's greatest battle. "All vessels report ready, sir," Captain Wee announced, her voice calm despite the tension that permeated the bridge. Donovan nodded, acutely aware that history was being written in this moment. Humanity had never waged war on this scale. They'd never faced an enemy like the Shroud. According to the Preservers, few species had survived first contact with them. "Open fleet-wide communications," he ordered. When the channel opened, Donovan spoke without notes or preparation. The words had been forming in his mind since the destruction of Proxima Station. "Soldiers of Earth and her colonies," he began. "Today we fight not just for vengeance, though we remember our fallen. We fight for the right of humanity to exist among the stars. The enemy we face views us as nothing more than food, as resources to be harvested. They believe we will be easy prey." Donovan paused, his eyes sweeping across the tactical display showing the vast armada under his command. "We are about to prove them wrong. Every human being, past, present, and future, is watching what we do here. Fight with everything you have. Fight so that our children will know the stars. Fight so that humanity endures." He nodded to Wei, who ended the transmission. "All ships, commence jump sequence," Donovan ordered. "Bring us into the Shroud's nest." One by one, the massive fleet entered the jump point, vanishing in flashes of blue-white energy, emerging light years away in the system the Preservers had identified as a major Shroud hibernation zone. What they found there exceeded their worst expectations. The system's star was nearly obscured by a vast structure, an organic megastructure wrapped around it like some cosmic parasite, siphoning its energy. Orbiting the star were not planets but massive biomechanical spheres, each dozens of times larger than Earth, and surrounding them, thousands of the obsidian ships they had encountered at Proxima and Arcturus, now fully awakened and mobilizing. "My God," Y whispered, momentarily breaking protocol. Donovan understood her reaction. The intelligence provided by the preservers had been accurate but incomplete. This wasn't just a hibernation outpost. It was one of the Shroud's primary hive clusters. They weren't scouting our defenses, Donovan realized aloud. They were preparing for a full-scale invasion. Before he could issue new orders, the sensors blared. The Shroud had detected them. The obsidian ships, thousands of them, were moving to intercept. "All vessels, engage according to battle plan Sigma," Donovan commanded, his voice steady despite the odds they now faced. "Focus fire on the primary vessels. Launch all fighters." The human fleet surged forward, weapon systems powering up across thousands of ships. The new technologies adapted from preserver data would be tested for the first time in actual combat. The two armadas collided in a fury of energy weapons, missiles, and kinetic projectiles. Space itself seemed to warp and shudder from the release of so much destructive power. The first volleys exceeded expectations. The specialized energy weapons penetrated the Shroud's biomechanical armor, causing cascading failures in their regenerative systems. Human fighters, piloted by the best Earth had to offer, weaved between the larger Shroud vessels, striking at vulnerable points identified by preserver intelligence. For 15 minutes, it seemed humanity might achieve a swift victory. Then the Shroud adapted. Their ships began merging, combining into larger, more formidable configurations. Energy shields previously unseen manifested around their vessels. Worst of all, they released swarms of smaller bioforms, each barely larger than a human, but numbering in the millions. "They're targeting our engines," Wei reported as the smaller Shroud entities attached themselves to human vessels, burning through hulls with corrosive secretions. Donovan watched the tactical display, mind racing. The battle plan needed to change. The Shroud were more numerous and more adaptable than anticipated. "Direct all dreadnoughts to concentrate fire on the hibernation spheres," he ordered. "If we can't defeat their fleet, we'll destroy their sleeping hives." The massive human dreadnoughts adjusted their position, bringing their planet-killer weapons to bear on the enormous biospheres orbiting the star. These weapons, fusion bombs coupled with exotic particle accelerators, had never been used in actual combat. They had been designed as a last resort, capable of cracking a small moon. "Dreadnoughts in position." "Sir," Wei confirmed. Donovan hesitated for just a moment. What he was about to order would kill billions of Shroud, most in hibernation, unaware of the conflict. It was genocide by any definition. Then he remembered the images from Proxima Station. The frozen bodies of colonists, the viciousness of an attack without provocation or warning. The preserver's warning echoed in his mind. "They do not see you as sentient. To them, you are biomass to be harvested." "Fire," he ordered. 27 dreadnoughts unleashed their primary weapons simultaneously. The combined energy release was visible as a rippling wave of destruction that washed over the nearest hibernation sphere. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then fissures appeared across its surface, spreading rapidly as internal explosions tore through the enormous structure. The effect on the Shroud fleet was immediate and unexpected. The obsidian ships nearest to the damaged sphere broke off their attack, rushing to defend their vulnerable hive. Others emitted energy patterns that the human sensors interpreted as communication, possibly distress signals. "They're connected to the hives," we realized. "Some kind of psychic or quantum link." Donovan seized the opportunity. "All vessels, focus fire on the remaining dreadnoughts. Clear them a path to the second sphere." The human fleet reformed, creating a protective corridor for the planet killers to advance. Losses were heavy. Nearly 30% of the smaller vessels were destroyed or crippled in the maneuver. But 16 dreadnoughts broke through, bringing their weapons to bear on the second hibernation sphere. When it too began to fracture, the entire Shroud fleet seemed to convulse in collective agony. "They're retreating," Wei announced, disbelief evident in her voice. Indeed, the Obsidian ships were pulling back, abandoning their attack on the human fleet to form a defensive perimeter around the remaining hibernation spheres. "They're protecting their sleeping masses," Donovan said, understanding dawning. "That's their weakness. Not their technology, not their biological adaptability. It's their connection to their hibernating kin." He opened a channel to the Shroud fleet, broadcasting on all frequencies the preservers had indicated the Shroud might monitor. "This is Admiral Marcus Donovan of the Earth Alliance. We have demonstrated our capability and willingness to destroy your hibernation spheres. Return to your territory immediately. Acknowledge all human-controlled space as forbidden to your kind. Failure to comply will result in the destruction of all remaining spheres in this system." For several long moments, there was no response. Then, a transmission, not in words or conventional signals, but in a series of neurological patterns that the preserver-derived translation matrix struggled to interpret. "They acknowledge," the communications officer finally reported. "They recognize us as inedible. They're agreeing to withdraw." A cheer erupted across the bridge, quickly silenced by Donovan's raised hand. "Maintain battle readiness," he ordered. "This isn't over until they're gone, and we've confirmed their retreat." Over the next 12 hours, the Shroud fleet carefully withdrew from the system, always keeping their remaining hibernation spheres protected behind their formation. The human armada held position, weapons locked on the vulnerable biostructures, a silent threat that needed no translation. Finally, the last of the Obsidian ships disappeared into what the sensors identified as some form of fold space, similar to humanity's jump technology, but far more advanced. Only then did Donovan allow himself to exhale. "Casualties?" he asked quietly. Wei's expression was solemn. 42,000 ships lost or severely damaged. Estimated personnel losses at 1.2 million. The numbers were staggering, representing the greatest loss of human life in a single battle in history. Yet, measured against what might have happened had the Shroud launched their invasion of Earth, it was a price worth paying. "Prepare a memorial transmission to be sent back to Earth," Donovan said. "Every name, every ship, they deserve to be remembered." As the remains of the human fleet regrouped, preparing for the jump home, Donovan stood at the viewport, looking out at the now quiet battlefield. Debris from both sides drifted in the void. Human technology and Shroud biomatter alike rendered equal in destruction. "Was it worth it?" Wei asked, coming to stand beside him. Donovan considered the question. "Ask me again in 50 years, when Earth is still standing and our children are exploring the stars without fear of being harvested." The journey home took 3 weeks. When they emerged from the jump point near Earth, they found a solar system transformed by their absence. New defensive platforms orbited every planet and moon. The shipyards had continued production, replacing a fraction of what had been lost. Most striking was the reception. Every ship, every station, every colony broadcast the same message. "Welcome home, heroes." In the aftermath, humanity's position in the galaxy changed fundamentally. The preservers made formal contact, offering alliance and technology exchange. Other species, learning of the human victory against the Shroud, sought diplomatic relations where before they had been cautious or dismissive. Admiral Donovan, standing before the rebuilt memorial, at what had once been Proxima Station, reflected on how quickly everything had changed. From a species taking its first tentative steps into interstellar space to one recognized, even feared, as a power to be reckoned with. A monument had been constructed at the site, a massive sculpture showing human hands holding a sphere representing Earth, protecting it from shadowy tendrils that reached from the darkness. Inscribed below were the names of those lost at Proxima, at Arcturus, and in the great battle that followed. "We came seeking vengeance," Donovan said softly to the empty space around him. "We found our place among the stars instead." As he turned to leave, his communicator chimed with an urgent message from Earth Command. New long-range sensors had detected unusual activity at the edge of explored space. Not the shroud. Something else. Something unknown, moving with purpose toward human territory. Donovan smiled grimly. Humanity had survived its trial by fire. Whatever came next, they would face it united, hardened by battle, and unwilling to yield. The stars had witnessed humanity's fury. Now, they would witness its resolve.